Alright everybody, this is Expendable. I'm here for a quick tutorial on using the Mig-15 on the Korea 1952 server. The main purpose here is to show you things quickly to get the most benefit out of flying the Mig-15 on the Korea 1952 server. So first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to show you how to quickly start it up manually. So for this, what you're really going to be doing is you're going to be connecting ground power. Then you're going to be flipping on all of these switches here. Then you're going to be flipping on all of these switches here, except for the isolation valve. And then you're going to open up the cover on the engine start. You're going to hold on the engine start. You can do that for about 10 seconds or so. And then you also need to slowly push this fuel stop lever down, and you're going to slowly do that. You're going to slowly advance it as the engine is starting up. So let's go ahead and get started here. First, we'll call for our ground our ground electrical power. So you hit your communications button, which is backspace on mine. F-18 ground crew, and actually you should be able to click up here too, I think. What we want is ground electrical power, and we want to turn it on. And I just realized that I don't have audio going to the right spot, so I'm going to need to quickly fix that. All right, hold on a second here. We want this to go to the rift. We want this to go to the rift. We want that to go to the rift. And we want this to go to the rift. All right. Okay, so now we got our ground power, and how I know I have the ground power is these lights showing my gear down. Those will only be lit if the engine was running or the ground power is on. So now the ground power is on. We're going to flip this switch, 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 this switch. You're turning them all on, and then over here you're going to turn this switch, this switch, this switch, this switch, and we leave the isolation valve off. We want our engine stop lever to be all the way up. Okay, we're going to unguard the engine start, and then we're going to hold this thing down. We got to crack the engine stop lever just a little bit, otherwise it won't start. We're holding this button down, and then we're slowly advancing that fuel knob down. I have a trim lever bound to that. You can see our instruments, we kind of see it spooling up. I'm still pushing that knob down. It's not down all the way. If we do it too fast, the engine is going to flood. You'll have a hot start or something. Something will go wrong. You'll know. Okay, I've let go of the start button. We are started here. I can close that. Now I got to reach behind me and click this black knob to close the canopy. And now I have to open up the cockpit air valve, make that sure that that lever rotates all the way to that red spot right in the middle there. And then we need to turn the oxygen on. So we rotate this counterclockwise. You see it comes up as we're rotating it. If you don't do that, your view will start graying out at high altitude from lack of oxygen. You don't want that. I'm going to go ahead and unlock the landing gear lock here. Otherwise, we can't move this landing gear lever. So that's something to keep in mind here. We also need to readjust this. We need to reslave this to the compass. It's actually already kind of, no, it's not. See, it's not quite set. So what we do is we hold this slave button here, and then when it aligns, you let go of it, and now it's slaved, or it's realigned with the compass. You have to periodically do that in flight. This will drift over time. Just something to keep in mind here. Okay, and we got that. So the engine is running. The next thing you're going to want to do, if you haven't already done this, is you do want some drop tanks. So let's go ahead and add drop tanks on. So hit my button for arm and refuel. You can also get that from the communications menu. Fuel tanks, I'm going to put 400s on. You can probably do any of these. I usually drop my tanks as I'm approaching the bullseye area. You don't really want them on. Like if you see the enemy aircraft, then drop your tanks. You can certainly do that, but you're going to be slower. You're already at a disadvantaged speed if you're going to do that. Let's talk radios real quick. So for the communications radio, we actually have a separate receive unit way back here and transmit unit way back here. Now you're like, that's kind of crazy. Why is that behind me? Well, the good news is you don't really need to look behind too often. You do have to kind of look here, kind of make sure that's set to where you need it to be. This is actually a remote control for the receive and transmitter. This dial here rotates your frequency, and it will actually adjust both the receive unit and the transmit unit at the same time. And when we're on the ground here at Maykop, we want to have frequency of 150. See, if I rotate this like here, you'll see back here it's not at 150. If you rotate this all the way to the 5, you can actually see 150 printed on there. You can see it's now 150. So we use 150 for communication at Maykop, coming into Maykop, taking off from Maykop. You want to be a 150. After you have left the traffic pattern, you want to switch over to the cap frequency, which is 154. So we'll do that. I'm going to test my radio real quick, make sure it's working. Expendable radio check. And I don't think anyone else is on the server right now, so they're probably not going to respond. That's totally fine. We got our fuel tanks there, so we are actually good to taxi. Now, one thing about taxiing the Mig-15, if you didn't already know this, the way the steering works, you got your rudder pedals, right? But the way the brakes work, actually, it's this little lever here. This lever, if you don't have any rudder inputs, this lever applies brake pressure to both brakes equally, and you can actually see this. This is the left brake, this is the right brake. Notice how both of them are pressurized when I squeeze that. If I push left rudder, you can see only the left brake is applying, and if I push right rudder, only the right brake is applying. That's very similar to British aircraft, so just be aware of that. So when we taxi, we are going to use the rudder, and oh, you know what? We forgot to put I think there's wheel chocks on here. I should have been able to roll a little bit sooner than that without having to put so much engine power in there. So let's just go ahead and make sure that we don't have wheel chocks in. Sometimes I forget to do this. F8 ground crew. And we want F4 wheel chocks and F2 to move. Might as well get that out of the way. Alright. Now we should be able to roll a little bit easier now without so much throttle. Maybe there weren't wheel chocks, I don't know. I can't tell because you can't go in external view. Alright, so I'm applying left rudder and tapping the brake a little bit here and there. I want a little bit of right rudder and brake to kind of center that nose again. Takes a little getting used to if you haven't flown a Russian aircraft before. Spitfire is very similar. Usually it's just necessary to just kind of keep clicking it. You can hold it. You could bind this to an axis too and do it that way. You can actually use, one of your brake rudder pedals. Actually, I've got that. If I push my toe brake, I do have it set up so I can have proportionate braking. I don't actually do that a whole lot. I don't know why. I guess I just like doing it on the stick. Kind of wish my paddle on my stick was an axis. Then I could have the more granular control of the braking, but that's all right. Okay, I don't see anybody coming in. I don't see anybody going on. I think I'm the only one on the server. We're going to talk about the navigation radio in a moment. That's really the next important thing to talk about. Let's get airborne first. Taxi down to the runway. We'll get this lined up before we crank up. We take off without flaps in the Mig-15. Okay, full throttle. Make sure we're pointing down the nose, down the runway. Okay, you're going to want to start lifting off at about 30 here, or just a little bit before. Actually, you start rotating a little bit before that. I'd say around 25 is when you want to start rotating. It's a nice gradual, slow rotation. The plane starts getting a little bit bumpy. Here we go. We're going to start pulling back. Let it fly off. Hold it. You got to hold that stick. And then we're going to crank this up. Now, here's a really important tip here. Got to wait for the 3 red lights here, and once we get that, we want to put the landing gear back in the neutral position. If we don't do that, the landing gear motor is going to continue running. And actually, I'm not sure if it's a landing motor or if it's a nitrogen tank. I'm not really sure, but eventually you'll burn it out, and that will not be good. Okay, so we're going to just circle Maykop a little bit here until we get a few other things out of the way. One thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to uncage your gun sight gyro. So you click this thing here and put that up, and now your gyro will take into account the turn angle of your aircraft. The newbie mistake to leave that in fixed, so just be aware of that. Okay, we're going to start working on getting up to altitude here. Now for navigation, this unit here is your ADF, your automatic direction finder. There's a few things to talk about here. Right now it's off. This switch right here controls it. I'm going to switch it on. I'm going to put it onto antenna. Now you see the power light is on. You can see this little needle here fluctuating. That's telling me my signal strength. There's a volume control here. And this is the frequency dial. Now the frequencies are broken up into 3 bands. You got 150 to 310. You have 310 to 640. You have 640 to 1300. For all of our radio navigation on the Korea 1952 server, you're going to use the middle band here. And you can check the frequencies, and there's really 2 of them that you're going to be interested in on the briefing. You'll see that the Maykop frequency is 591, and you'll see the bullseye frequency is 378. We're going to tune to 591 first. So this is the tuning knob here. We're going to rotate this until we get to 591. It's about right here. We also want this homing switch. You want this, actually we could set it to near. I'm a little bit confused on the function of this thing. I actually usually keep it at far. Here we go. So you see how that needle just went all the way to the right? We tuned in 591, and we hear a Morse code there. That's really important. You want to make sure you hear the right Morse code. If we go back to the briefing, you'll see we've got dash dot dot right under the 591. You hear that dash dot dot? That tells us that we've got the right frequency tuned in. That's really, really important. If we were to hear the wrong Morse code, we might not be dialed into the frequency that we actually think that we are on. Now, this is your radio compass here, and right now this needle is fixed. It's not moving at all. It's stuck on this position. And the reason why it's stuck on that position is because we actually haven't switched on the radio compass. This switch here is on antenna right now. We left click once to comp. Now you're going to see that needle starting to turn. Now what that needle does is it points to the radio station relative to the nose of your aircraft. 0 degrees is the front of our aircraft, dead ahead. 18 or 180 is directly behind us. So we can see right now that the radio station that we're tuned to is off my left wing. It's right about here, and you can see Maykop is right here. I'm circling it with my mouse here. That's what the needle is pointing to. So if I were to continue turning and put Maykop directly towards my nose, you're going to see that needle is going to center on 0 as I head right towards it. And there you go. Now what's important about ADF navigation, and technically what we are doing is we're steering the plane towards a non-directional beacon. The non-directional beacon doesn't give you any distance information, so we don't know how far away we are. But the important thing to know is the further away you are from a non-directional beacon, the needle deflections are going to be much smoother. You know, it takes a while. Like if I'm on a course here, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly away from Maykop. We should be over it right now. Well, we're not over it. I'll tell you what. We'll put it behind us, and as we fly away from it, the needle is going to move quite fast as we turn away from it. Like the radial deflections are going to be much greater. If I were further away, if I were say 10 nautical miles or 20 nautical miles away from this thing, the needle's not going to move a whole lot, right? As I change course. The point is, if you were to put this beacon on a map and look at it, you can see that the closer you are, the deflections are going. It's going to change much faster. I guess is the point that I'm trying to make. I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining it. But anyway, the really other important frequency that you're going to want is the frequency for the bullseye, which is 378. So I'm going to rotate this guy. I've used the left click and hold and drag. You'll be able to rotate this faster. Or if you use the mouse wheel, it'll rotate slower. Here's the mouse wheel. We want a 378. We're actually a little bit far away from it. We're actually not going to be able to pick it up. We want that switch on far. So what we actually need to do is we need to start heading towards the bullseye. Now I know from Maykop that bullseye is going to be roughly about 210, somewhere around there. So I'm using my HSI here and see what I'm almost due south. I'm almost heading due south right now. We kind of want to head in about 210 direction, just to get us closer. You can hear the static there. It means we haven't really picked up that NDB yet. And actually, if we should be right about here, we got a little ways to go before we're going to pick that up. And what you'll see here, when we don't have something tuned in, you'll see the needle. Whoops. Okay, we just came in within range. We just picked it up, and I can see a strong signal strength. But what happens is when you don't have something tuned in here, I'll purposely untune this. Okay, so it's untuned. Now what happens is this needle just starts slowly spinning around at a constant rate. That's your indication that you aren't tuned into anything. You're not picking up a frequency. There we go. There's our frequency. And you see the needle is coming back. We need to see where it settles on, and then we know that's going to be off to our left. So we're going to start turning that way. And if we keep following this needle so that it stays straight up and down on that 0, we will fly right to the bullseye. So if we see a little deflection right here, if we were to continue flying on this heading right here, we know that we will eventually pass the bullseye on our left. If we want to head directly to the bullseye, we want that arrow directly on that 0. So we'll put it on 0 here. We'll start flying towards it. So we'll keep this heading right here. We'll roll out, and we'll just keep on flying towards it. Now, eventually, that needle's going to move. Right now, showing it's off to the right. So we actually need to make a little course correction, right? And as we get closer to it, we're going to have to make more and more course corrections if we want to fly directly to the bullseye. Eventually, if we fly right over the bullseye, you'll actually see the needle spin around to pointing to behind us. That means we overflew the bullseye. Now, we hear the Morse code here. I know the Morse code already. I know that's the correct Morse code. You can hear it, but again, if you need to verify, you look right under here in the briefing, you can see dash dot 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 dash. There's a pause between that, and that's definitely what we're hearing, right? Now, that Morse code gets annoying after a while, so if you look down here, this little switch, you flip this down, you will no longer hear the audio from your navigation radio. When you want to tune a new frequency, make sure you turn that on so that you can hear it. So those are the things to keep in mind. So we won't hear the static anymore, we won't hear the Morse code because I've turned off the audio to our ADF unit. Okay, so that's pretty much all you really need to know about navigation. So if we continue flying on this course, we're going to head towards the bullseye. The other thing you need to keep in mind here is eventually we're going to want to drop our fuel tanks. And let me just go ahead and show you how you do that. I don't necessarily need to drop them yet, but if we have this switch up here, when the external tanks run out of fuel, this drop tanks light will actually light up green. That's an indication that, hey, you might as well drop the drop tanks because there's nothing in it. But you don't have to wait for that. At any time you can flip up this red cover and you can push this button here and it'll drop the tanks in. We're just going to go ahead and do that right now. Tanks are gone. And the light does turn on. when you do that. Okay, so I've dropped my drop tanks now. I probably drop them a little bit sooner than I normally would, but I'm not too far off from when I would want to drop them. I would probably want to climb a little bit higher altitude. The other thing that I was going to tell you is you want to keep in mind on your altitude here, because it is going to vary from weather to weather. You know, sometimes they may change the weather patterns, the temperatures and all that. So what altitude that you start having contrails at may vary. But right now on this server, we'll start doing contrails at 7,400 meters. You can see we just crossed 6,000 meters. So when we get to 7,400, we'll start conning is what we call it, or contrails. If I look behind me, you can see it on being contrails. And if we go another 1,000 meters up, you'll see that we'll start contrailing. Right about now. There, see the contrail? Oh, why is that important? It's important because contrails are visible from far away. The enemy can see that. So can friendlies. It can be helpful to con just momentarily. Let your friends know where you are, and then duck down below that conning altitude. And it's, you know, it just kind of depends on the situation. If you want to sneak up on the enemy, I recommend being below contrail height, because you'll stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm diving down, I'm reducing power a little bit here because I don't want to overspeed the aircraft. Another thing to keep in mind, when this needle gets up to about up in this range here near the 100, you're going to lose control of the aircraft. This plane does not like to go supersonic, and if you get close to supersonic, you actually lose all control authority, and the plane will start going into a dive, and you won't be able to pull out of it. Let me tell you what you need to do in order to pull out of it. I'm purposely pushing it down now. See, this gets up to 100. And we don't want to do this too long, okay? All right, I've lost control. I'm doing left roll, but I'm rolling to the right. See that? Nothing I can do. Reduce throttle and put your speed brakes out. And pull back to bleed off some speed. Okay, ease the stick so you don't pass out. Put the throttle back in, turn off your air brake. All you really need to do is have that needle come back a little bit, and you should be able to regain control of the aircraft. That's really, really important. Otherwise, you'll fly right into the ground and not be able to get out of it. So hopefully you saw what I did now. I lost a lot of altitude in that dive. I can actually do it a lot faster. Normally, I would actually hit the speed brake button on my HOTAS. That would help out. I didn't do that this time. I actually reached over with the mouse and clicked on it. I rarely ever do that. You can see I've got a switch for it. That green light, by the way, means that your speed brake is out. When it's off, it means your speed brake is in. And there are no intermediate settings for the speed brake. It's just it's all in or all out. All right. Let's see, what else can I tell you here? Oh, we have not charged the gun. So normally you do this way before you come out here. This is really bad. I am not ready to fire at all. So I have 3 guns, right? I have the 223s and the big 37 cannon. In order to fire these guns, we have to charge them. That basically loads a round into each barrel. We have to hold this button down for each of these until they light up, and then you let go and you do the next one. Okay, you should have 3 reds. There we go. So we have to make sure that we do that. And I often do that before I even take off. I often do that on the ground. You can do it in the air, it doesn't really matter. Just as long as you got them going. And then you also need to take this red safety panel off by clicking on it, and then you should be able to fire. There you go. So really important. If the guns still don't fire, or if these lights don't turn on, it could be because you forgot to flip these switches right here. Alright, so we got that. Now let's say something went wrong and you can't get the landing gear down. Like somebody got a couple hits on you. What you could try to do is you could try to blow the landing gear down. So let me demonstrate how this works. I'm going to reduce throttle. You've got this emergency knob here. What you would do is you would click on that. You have to rotate this to open up a nitrogen bottle. You have to rotate it all the way. It takes a little while. And then you have independent left and right blowdowns. You have to pull this cable out. You just click on it. You hold it. It should force it down. Now, my gear's not actually damaged, so this probably isn't going to work right. And then you do the other one. Okay, we have something similar for flaps. I've never actually had a notion to use that. I think my gear may be up because the motor is actually working. Who knows? I probably destroyed things by doing this without actually having damaged landing gear. Actually, it says my gears are up, so it probably didn't work. We're going to go ahead and put it down just for fun. Let's see if we still get 3 greens. I actually don't know. Never really tried this before. I mean, without a damaged plane. I got 3 greens, so should be good to land, right? I also probably put that gear down while it's flying too fast. That's the other thing. When you take off, you want to make sure you bring that gear up as quickly as possible. If you go too fast, your gear could get stuck. The gear doors could jam. You might not be able to get the gear down later. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up for now, because there's one other thing I want to show you. So right now I'm flying straight and level, right? This isn't going up because I've blown it down. See how the motor is no longer working? The motor's busted. Well, I've actually forced it down by pulling these cables, so it's not going to go back up again. And that's fine. I mean, I was just doing that for demonstration purposes. But I'm flying straight and level. Look at my artificial horizon. That plane is not where it should be. So how do we fix that? That will happen, and this will also sometimes get way off, especially if you're doing dogfighting, and this thing will tumble, and it won't be aligned. What you do is you left click on this thing, hold it out, and then click on it again, and you really want to do that when you're straight and level, and it'll recenter, realign. I'm not sure exactly what you call that. Let's actually go back for our landing. Let's tune in Maykop, and we know that we got to go to 590. We'll rotate the knob here. There we go. There's 590, and we can see that needle starting to come alive. No, it's going to be off our right nose here. There it is. Well, let's just start heading towards the sucker, and we'll put her back down at Maykop. I'll try to give you some pointers about how to land this thing. We're flying a little bit slow because we know we got the gear down. We don't want to cause any additional damage to it. Oops. Probably don't need to rotate this sucker back, but whoa! Hey, look at that! I'm looking out my gun sight. I don't even know what I did there. That was weird. Okay. I can't get out of this now. my head is through the windshield. Anybody know what I clicked on? I don't know what I just clicked on. I have no idea. That's not encountered this before. Hello. Fly. Well, I might not be doing a landing. Can I see my compass? Yeah. There we go. That was weird. I've never actually had that happen before. Alright, don't do that. I'm not sure what I clicked on to make that happen. That was exciting. Alright. So, we're approaching Maykop. It's still off a little bit. You can see my needle pointing a little bit to the left of the nose, so I'm going to do a little course correction. Zoom in my view here real quick. See if I can see Maykop yet. Normally I wouldn't be approaching from this low. It's partially because I'm got the gear down and flying a little bit slow. Let's get a little bit of altitude so we can see better. Should be getting pretty close to it. Okay, when we're straight and level, now would be kind of a good time to just make sure we re-slave our HSI. And it was fine, there was no error correction there. And we're looking for Maykop. One other thing I should probably point out, you probably won't really notice this, but with non-directional beacons, it doesn't always make it a straight line towards it. The way that radio signal works, that radio wave can actually bend around mountains a little bit, and I think it's somewhat simulated in DCS. So just be aware that you might fly a slightly curving track towards or away from an NDB. It's not always a straight line. It's not as accurate as more modern VOR radios, which aren't affected by terrain, but NDBs are affected by terrain. The signal tends to follow the slopes a little bit and causes a little bending. So just be aware of that. It's not really a factor in the flying we do here. I mean, we're flying relatively short distances, so you really won't encounter that or notice that. All right, so I think I see Maykop up ahead here. Yeah, that's Maykop. All right. So my gears are already down. You are going to want to land with flaps, and you're actually going to want to put the speed brake out. And it's going to depend on different factors, but I hate to say this, I kind of do this by feel. I kind of know when I'm flying too fast. I kind of know when I'm flying too slow. But you'll probably want to put the speed brake out on your final approach. It's better to have, I think, a slightly steeper approach. You don't want a shallow approach here. So I'm going to land on the same runway that I took off from. So you see the needle is pointing right there. Reduce throttle a little bit. A little pitch up trim here. One thing here, when this light is lit, that white light, that just means that you're trimmed for takeoff. And as I move my trim up or trim down, you see that light turns off. It means that you're not trimmed for takeoff. The other thing is you may hear what sounds like a ringing bell. Don't be alarmed. That's not a fire signal. There's not something wrong with your aircraft. That's actually the outer or inner marker. It's for navigation. It just kind of tells you that you're crossing the I can't remember whether it's the outer marker or inner marker. I think it's the inner marker. We may hear that as we come in on this approach. Alright, so I'm watching my airspeed here. I'm going to go ahead and put the flaps down. Here's that ringing I was just telling you about, so that's probably the outer marker actually. Maybe it's the inner marker. I don't know too much about those markers, so I'm not a IFR trained pilot here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put the speed brake out. And I probably want a little throttle. That speed brake is not going out. Might have damaged, or you know what? I might have ruined the system when I blew the gear down. That's a possibility. So I'm just going to go ahead and reduce throttle. Now, the important thing with landing here is you want to hold the plane off as long as possible to try to bleed off the airspeed. So you do that by just back pressure, increasing the back pressure. Just hold it off. Back pressure. More back pressure. More back pressure, more back pressure, and it should settle. More back pressure. I've got a lot of airspeed here because I couldn't put the speed brake out. More back pressure. More back pressure. Okay, put that brake in. We may not have any brake. The reason we don't have any brake is because I screwed things up when I blew the gear down. I basically destroyed or used up all the nitrogen that would go to the brakes. So that's why we aren't able to stop out here. My brakes are essentially doing nothing. In fact, I'm squeezing the brake lever and see how it's not even going. and you can see there's no pressure there. I'm sure there's a gauge somewhere around here that tells you how much pressure you have. I'm not sure where it is, but suffice it to say, and maybe it's because I didn't close this thing. Let's close this and see what happens. Oops, it happened again. For some reason, when you spin that thing, it messes up my view. I don't know what's going on there. That was really strange. Okay, let's close this. Do we get any pressure back? Oh, look. I got pressure back when I did that. I can hear it hissing too. So when I blew this sucker down, when I left this valve open, it deprived the speed brake and the brakes of pressure. And I mean, it's still not operating. I still don't have enough pressure for it. It's building, actually. Look at that. But maybe it's air pressure. Maybe this is based on air pressure. Maybe. Oh yeah, look at that. I spool the engine up a little bit. All right, so yeah, I learned something here. Well, this is interesting. So, put some throttle in, but it's not zeroing out when I let go of it. Anyway, the aircraft is kind of broken now, I think, from pulling these handles. But that's okay. Anyway, that is pretty much it. I wish you luck in the battlefield. Don't forget to use your radios. Please, please, please use your SRS radio. You know what? We forgot to tune to 154 as we were approaching the bullseye. I should have done that. It was helpful if you do that so you can communicate with the other pilots that are flying on your side. Communication is worth 1,000 points per second, in my opinion. So don't forget to use SRS, and don't forget to tune your radio after you take off. Put it on 154, and we'll see you in the skies.